Hi and welcome to Viking Superpowers. In today's video I'm going to talk about Odin's ravens. And I'm going to start with a little story of something that happened to me in 2023. I was staying in a motel in the big city of Brisbane here in Australia, and I was translating from the sagas. From memory, I think I was working on the famous poem called Halvamal, which is the sayings of Odin, or the sayings of the High One. And I was having a great time. It was fairly early, about 7 o'clock in the morning. It was very frigid for Brisbane. And suddenly there was this very loud crow or ravens cawing right at my door. It was like they were literally at my door in this big motel building. So I thought, that's strange. So I grabbed my camera. I put it on video. As I opened the door, the ravens flew off, and I stepped out and I saw there was two of them, and they just took off from right in front of my door, flew over the railing, flew down. By the time I got up, I just got this. And then I thought, that was really cool. You know, that was like Odin's ravens coming to visit me. And I just happened to look down for some reason at the door lintel as I stepped in, and there was this logo. Now, I did a double take. I'm somebody who's used to getting messages from the universe, used to having strange, even paranormal experiences, but this really rocked me a little bit. I thought, that can't be chance. Like, there's something going on here. And this is pretty much at the start of this journey of researching for Viking Superpowers Way of Asgard. And after that, I kept on getting other messages. And not so long after that, I drove from my hometown in little town, northern New South Wales in Australia, and I drove up to Brisbane once again. And I stopped at a service station on the way. And when I went and got some food and a coffee and came back out. And when I got into the car, as I started the motor, once again, two ravens came down and landed virtually right in front of the car. And they stood there and they looked at me with their twinkling eyes. And it was sort of a knowing look. And then they flew off. And it was specifically, they were landing to give me a message. And the message was, we're with you. So the Aesir, the gods of the Vikings, who I think are extremely advanced people from either another star system, perhaps the Pleiades, perhaps they're Nordics, or maybe they've been here on the earth for a very long time, keeping an eye on us. Maybe they created us. That's why they're very human or humanoid. But I had a distinct feeling, not just a sort of a fantasy. I had a distinct feeling that I got another message, same as with the crows, saying, you're on this journey and we're with you. When I was in Iceland, I felt the same thing. I didn't actually see crows or ravens there that I can remember. But as I visited the saga spots, a number of times I felt a strong sense of, hi Dave, you know, good to see you. Haven't seen you for a long time. And I do believe that I am reincarnated. I've had a number of reincarnation experiences. I've talked about this a little bit in one of my videos, but I do think that I definitely was on a funeral pyre as a Viking type character. Could have been in the Viking age, could have been earlier, could have been a bit later, but definitely I had a yogic experience of having been a type of a Scandinavian. It was a Scandinavian forest. The guy who had set my pyre on fire had, you know, bright, thick red hair, big red beard, and he looked something like me. At the time, I thought he was my brother. So I have a connection to Iceland, something I don't really talk about, but something an old Icelandic lady told me about. She believes that I'm a character from the sagas, which for me is a sort of a fantasy come true, but it's not something I want to make a big deal of, because really it could just be a nice fantasy. But the point of this video is that we all receive messages if we're open, and they can range from just simple messages telling you to go back and check on the stove. Did you leave it on? Which often will find you did, which could be explained by some kind of, super sense. And there's other messages that are really, really hard to explain within the normal paradigm accepted by science. So I just want to have a look at some of the things I saw in Scandinavia that I think are connected. So if you have a look at this little figurine of Odin, and you'll see he's got a horned helmet. And I showed you in previous videos the horned helmet that I saw in Opakra, where I'd gone to look for the Volan brooch. And they've got a heathen temple they've recreated there, sort of half scale. And this statue of Odin, which is based on a number of figurines found in Scandinavia. And if you have a look closely at this one, you'll see that the horns on his helmet are actually ravens. And then there's this other one where the ravens, he's got the horned helmet, the ravens are here. Now, this horned helmet thing has always been a bone of contention with people interested in the Viking Age. Most people will tell you that they didn't have horns on their helmets. And I've always agreed that that would be not an advantage in a battle, to have something sticking out that an axe or a sword could easily get hold of. But I do think that they were used as a ceremonial helmet. And I believe that I found the reason for it because when I was researching this in Scandinavia, with this knowledge of the ravens being like the horns, I saw a couple of objects that I've seen long time ago, just looking at books about the Dark Ages, talking about ancient Scandinavia, way before the Viking Age. So you'll see, I'm just going to put up a photograph I took of two famous helmets found in a bog in Denmark. And you'll see that they've got big horns, sort of big curving horns. And if we go in closely, you can see there's like a bird's beak on the front and the big round eyes. Now, if you look at these two very alien-looking creatures, this was ploughed up, as often happens, by a farmer in Denmark, and one side of it got quite damaged, but the other side's perfectly intact. And you'll see that he's wearing like a helmet. In my book, I talk about a concept of BJANNAK, where Odin is said to give his men who are going to battle or going on a mission BJANNAK. And that word generally is translated as being from an Irish word meaning blessing. And some people go as far as to say, well, I think it's Cleisvi and Vigfusund, probably the best Old Norse English dictionary, has a very interesting interpretation where they say they believe it means bannock, which is a type of flat cake. We usually associate it with Scotland, but it can be quite big, like top of the head size, like a hat size. Bannock. And that makes perfect sense. And Cleisby and Vigfusson explain this from a Christian lens, which people tended to always do. They'd say this is from the wafer that's broken in the Christian Eucharist. This is my body. This bread represents my body. Eat of it and think of me. Here's the wine. This is my blood. Drink it. Think of me. It's what Jesus is said to have said. But I think what it's talking about is the size and shape of it. And he gives them BJANNAK. He puts it on their head. I don't think it's a blessing. I believe it's actually a communication device. And I also think it could be a voice thing, but I actually think it is a telepathic device. It's a way that Odin could communicate with his people in their minds. And, who knows? I believe this is high-tech stuff, ancient high-tech. And he could show them coordinates in their minds, or he could maybe change their biochemistry to turn them into berserkers, turn them into really fierce, amazing wild animal fighters, or certainly some kind of location device where he could see where his men were, up there in Asgard in the sky, looking out over Hlith Iskalf, the side shelf where he can monitor the whole world. This is going with the whole paleo contact idea of high tech rather than mystical, mythical, fabled realms. I think it's actually a story of real things that were going on in the ancient past, and people putting it into the best language they could come up with. When you look at this strange looking man with the helmet on his head, I think that the big helmets are like humans' attempt to recreate that. You know, maybe they just remembered what that looked like. Somebody obviously made this one with the actual BJANNAK on this little god's head, but I think the ones who made the big helmet with it's like an owl face on the front and these big horns, I don't think they're actually horns. I think it's a representation of this neat, compact, high-tech version of it. So where is this leading? Well, I don't have access to a BJANNAK. I think Elon Musk and people like that are working towards something very much like a BJANNAK, a way of interfacing with the mind. But I really believe in human superpowers, that we don't need technology to use telepathy. We don't need technology to use telekinesis. We don't need technology to see the future, to move things with our mind, to astral travel, to remote view. These are well attested through history as something, you know, way before high tech that people could do. And I think that the powers, these Aesir, are on our side. They weren't always kind to us in the past, but I do think that they've matured and evolved. And I get the distinct feeling that they're looking after us. And as I said with that first story, if you're open to the world being stranger than you're told, then these things are clear messages. And those two crows visiting me, it wasn't as if there was like something to eat at my door. There was another 30 doors in that hotel. Why did they come to my door? They were delivering a message. So the world's wonderful and mysterious. So I hope you'll check out my book. This is it, Viking Superpowers, Way of Asgard. The thing about the book is that the next edition that I'm creating is going to be illustrated. And I'm working hard at that at the moment. And I'd even go so far to firstly thank all the people who've bought the book. You know, I love you. I really do. I'm so stoked that you bought it, and I hope it's not disappointing that an illustrated version's coming out now, but I really had to get the print version out at the same time as Paul Wallace launched his latest book, the Eden Enigma. This wonderful book here, when he mentions me at length and he says, you know, make sure you get David's book. So over time, people have suggested to me that I should illustrate it because I am an illustrator. And I also have wonderful photos that I took in Scandinavia. So I'm bringing out that version very soon, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. So if you're intending to buy the book, maybe hold off a bit so as you can get that version. And that's pretty much it. I'd really love to hear your comments about what I've talked about here in the video. I wish you all the best and see you next time. As they always say on YouTube, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Hit the notification bell. Tell your friends about me. Follow me on Facebook, Viking Superpowers on Facebook, Viking Superpowers on Instagram. I'll see you soon.